Hello everyone, my name is Mimi and welcome to my channel. In 2022, I was feeling very burnt out and after months of agonizing soul searching, decided to quit my job of 6 years. During my break, I made sure to take some time to get myself reacquainted with the collections that led me to fall in love with fashion in the first place, and they reignited something inside of me that I thought had long died out. Of all the collections that resuscitated my love for fashion, the best one was definitely Dior 2007 Spring-Summer Haute Couture collection. The finale look especially, which traditionally is a wedding gown, still takes my breath away after all these years. I found myself immensely inspired again. So, I wanted to reinterpret and recreate this look into a one-of-a-kind doll. Before quitting last year, I went on a holiday to Thailand for the very first time in my life. And I was very curious to see what kinds of dolls are being sold in Thailand, so I visited some department stores while I was there. They carried a lot of rainbow high and shadow high dolls, which have not been released in South Korea, so I ended up getting 3 of the rainbow high dolls. My original plan was to customize one of the 3 that I had bought, but the dolls looked so pretty, I couldn't bear the thought of possibly ruining them by customizing. So instead, I went on AliExpress and bought another at a cheaper price to customize. As you can see on the screen, there are some staining on the doll's face, but hopefully I will be able to get rid of them using acetone. I removed the doll's clothes and accessories and started to cut her hair short. This process is always nerve-wracking for me because it feels like the point of no return. Now that I got rid of as much hair as I possibly can, it's time to remove the head from the body. Dunk the doll's head in boiling water or use hairdryer to soften the doll's head. Once it's nice and squishy, yank it off the body. Doll's head is heated, so remember to protect your hands with some fabric or a towel. In order to get rid of the rest of the hair, cut open the doll's head using an X-Acto knife. If you are not planning to replace the inset eyes, you can remove rest of the hair by scraping them up through the neck hole using needle nose pliers or tweezers. Once the head is open, you can easily remove the hair plugs. Then, push the inset eyes out from the inside of the head and remove inset eye covers. Be extra careful not to damage the doll's features when using sharp tools. Remove the factory paint using acetone. You can use nail polish remover if it has acetone in it, but I found 100% acetone to be most effective. Use tools like tweezers or toothpick to get into small crevices like lips and corners of the eyes. The factory paint stained the vinyl, but since I'm going to change the skin tone of the doll's face anyway, I decided to finish off by rinsing the head with soap and warm water. For the fashion show, designer John Galliano opted for muted and toned down makeup, but since the dress is going to be in all white, I thought the contrast of simple white and colorful makeup would be more interesting. So I decided to do a face-up inspired by another makeup look from the collection. In order to change the skin tone and hide the stains, I used watered-down acrylic paint method. By layering diluted acrylic paint, you can cover a surface without any visible brush strokes. After about 6 layers, I was able to get perfectly smooth surface to work on. Spray the doll's head with Mr. Super Clear sealant. This provides some grit on the surface of doll's face so that pastel, color pencil, and paint can be used on it. To create perfect symmetry, use a template to mark the placements of eyeshadow. Normal color pencils are oil-based, and oil can disrupt the sealant from working properly, which is why doll artists use water-based watercolor pencils. Use brown pencil to draw the eye lines. Once you are happy with the shape and placement, fill them in using black pencil. It is very difficult to make changes in the later stages of a face-up, So even if it takes a while, it is very important to try and lay down perfect outlines and placements of colors during this stage. I've personally found that it makes the world of difference to the quality of a face-up if I've been patient in the early stages. Using a transparent grading ruler, I regularly check for symmetry. Fill in the waterline of the eyes using red pencil. Whenever colors stop building up, spray Mr. Super Clear sealant and then continue once the sealant is completely dry. Spraying the sealant is like creating another layer to work on. And doll face up is basically building up opacity and saturation on the layers until you are satisfied. So even if at first the colors don't seem to be building up as opacally as you want, trust the process and keep working on it through layers. Using purple and pink soft pastel dust, I started to build up the eyeshadows. Smooth transition of colors also requires a lot of layers to create, so I had to be patient and keep working on them. Accentuate the doll's beautiful facial features by lightly applying pastel dust to create dimensions. Once the initial lines and colors have been placed, focus on building opacity and saturation. Just like the eyeshadows, use a template to map out the placement and shape of eyebrows. For fine lines like lip creases and eyelashes, use a nail art brush and apply acrylic paint or the pigment lifted directly from the watercolor pencils. Once you are happy with the saturation of the eyeshadows, start applying Pearl-X powder to add sparkle and depth to the face-up. Mr. Super Clear Sealant will dramatically decrease the shine of a Pearl-X powder, so it is important to apply several layers of it. At this point, I noticed that I used a lot of pink and purple hues to this face-up. So in order to create a visual interest and add pop of color, I decided to paint the eyelines with bright, almost fluorescent yellow. I added some black glitters to the eyelines to add some texture using clear drying PVA glue. Once the glue is dry, apply a thin layer of high gloss varnish to set the glitters in place. I also added glitters to the eyebrows. Gently dust off excess glitter. You can use fine brush or an X-Acto knife to sharpen the lines created by the glitter. After spraying a final layer of Mr. Super Clear Sealant, apply high gloss varnish to the waterlines and the lips. Gluing the lashes is always a struggle for me. I like to use tweezers and PVA glue to slowly fix them in place. This is the finished face-up. Rather than drawing them on, I glued each lower lashes individually for realism. I wanted the eyes to pop, so I bought the glass eyes in complementary color to mainly pink face-up and fixed them inside the head using blue tack. Now on to the wig. I realized that the original design reminded me of my favorite costume of all time in one of my favorite movies, which is the masquerade dress in the movie Marie Antoinette, worn by the incomparable Norma Shearer. Since I'm going to exaggerate the silhouette of the design even more, I decided to go all out for the wig as well. Inspired by Marie Antoinette's signature style, the movie, and Jeremy Scott's Moschino 2020 Fall and Winter collection, which was inspired by Marie Antoinette, I'm going to create a wig fit for a Rococo goddess. To make a wig cap, first cover the doll's head with cling wrap to protect it from glue. Then, using a stretchy material, I covered the doll's head. I used an old t-shirt that I can no longer fit into, but you can use any other material as long as it has stretch and is the right thickness. Try to remove as much wrinkles as possible in the areas where the hair will be glued on. Using a brush, I spread PVA glue evenly onto the surface. Once you cover the surface, let it dry and then repeat the process. After about 10 layers of glue, I was able to get sturdy but not too heavy wig cap. Trim off excess fabric using small scissors and mark the hairline. Rather than cutting exactly to the marked hairline, I like to leave some space for error, just in case. Once you are happy with the result, remove the wig cap from the head. Then I put the wig cap on the doll's head to see how it fits. It was a perfect fit! In order to achieve the height and the silhouette of the style, I'm going to place a styrofoam sphere as a base. Using an acrylic paint in the same color as the intended hair, I painted the wig cap and the sphere base. The materials I used to create the hair are as follows: acrylic yarn in black, metallic pet brush, PVA glue, hair straightener, and a wire coat hanger. I used cardboard paper to cut the acrylic yarn in uniform length. I cut the acrylic yarn in double the amount of desired hair length. Then, secure cut acrylic yarn strands onto a wire hanger like so. Use a metallic pet brush to detangle the yarn. Once detangling is done, use hair straightener to lengthen and add smooth texture. What I really like about the yarn hair is the fact that it is easy to manage and style. Also, the fiber seems to be more in scale to the doll size. But acrylic yarn hair doesn't give you that much length, and it can be very strenuous to prepare. On a sheet of plastic surface, lay down a line of glue bed. Then place the yarn hair on top of the glue bed. Place another line of glue on top of the hair and use a brush to spread the glue evenly. It is very important to be thorough so that the glue can cover every fiber and hold it in place. Once you have enough hair wefts made and the glue is completely dry, remove the wefts from the plastic surface and trim the glue base of the weft. Glue finished yarn wefts onto the base of styrofoam sphere. Then, flip the hair up and secure them on top of the sphere using watered down glue. I glued the foam base onto the wig cap, and I thought this as is looked kinda nice. After gluing a ring of yarn wefts onto the wig cap itself, I used some fluff I got from making the wefts to fill in the gap between the wig cap and the foam base. Then, like I did with the base, I flipped the hair up covering the filling and glued them in place. I fill in the wig cap by gluing the hair wefts. Since the wig is an updo, the wefts are glued pointing upward. For a clean hairline, glue the wefts on the inside of the wig cap along the hairline. Then, flip the hair over to reveal a neat hairline. You can use heated metal chopstick to set the hairline in place. Now, I'm going to move on to making the ringlets, which are an integral part of 18th century Rococo style wig. Using a hair straightener, heat up one end of the metal chopstick. Then, place the glue part of a weft onto the heated part of the chopstick and wait for the glue to melt a bit and then get stuck to the chopstick. Once the weft is secure, roll the hair around the chopstick and use the hair straightener to set the curl in place. Slip the weft off the chopstick and now you have a perfect ringlet. You can glue the ringlets directly onto the wig. I regularly tried the wig on the doll to see how it looks and to determine where the ringlet should be placed. When I was about to finish the wig, I wasn't very happy with what I had made. Since I had spent quite a substantial amount of time, I tried to salvage the wig and tried to convince myself that once I add the accessories, it will look fine. But I wasn't about to settle for fine, so naturally I had to remake the wig. Some of the problems that I had with the wig were the fact that the foam base of the wig was too big, so once I added the hair and the ringlets, the silhouette of the wig became very dull and bulky. Also, the ringlets were all in similar shapes and sizes, so they looked too repetitive. I went through basically the same process to create another wig. What I did different was, I used smaller oval-shaped foam as a base, and I curled the hair before piling them. Also, I created ringlets of different shapes and sizes to make the texture look more dynamic. I finished the wig by adding nail jewelry glued on sewing pins to the wig. Having to make another wig from the scratch took a long time, but at the end I was very happy that I didn't settle for less and created something that I can be proud of. While I was making the wig, I dropped the doll a couple of times and the face-up ended up cracking in several places. They are only visible in certain angles, but knowing that they're there drove me crazy. So I had no choice but to redo the face-up. I wasn't very happy with the wide-eyed, childlike features of the doll sculpt anyway, so I went on AliExpress and bought another doll's head with more demure facial features. Now it's finally time to create patterns for the fashion. First, wrap the doll's body with cling wrap several times. Then, tape the doll's body as tightly as possible with masking tape. Using a pen, draw on the seam lines. Since the pattern pieces are so small, be diligent about labeling the pieces. Once you are happy with the lines, cut the pattern pieces off the body. This process can damage the doll's body, so be very careful, or better yet, use this method on a mannequin doll you don't mind damaging a bit. Transfer the pattern pieces onto a paper. For doll clothes, I like to add 5mm of seam allowances. Now that the bodice pattern is done, I'm going to make the patterns for the origami details. When I was studying the images of the original design, I noticed that the origami details looked very similar to a flower origami I used to make as a child. So I made the origami flowers in several different sizes. I unfolded the flowers and sectioned the single petal part of the origami off, then cut it out. I refolded the petals to check for sizes on the doll's body. I marked the fold lines on the paper so that I can reference them when I'm making fabric versions of the origami details. I decided to use white cotton fabric that I had lying around to make the bodice and the origami details. In order to stabilize and add support to the fabric, I used fusible interfacing on the fabric. Fusible interfacings have smooth and grainy side. The grainy side is where the adhesive is applied to, so the grainy side must face the wrong side of a fabric. The adhesive on the interfacing is activated by heat and pressure. When using a domestic iron to bond interfacing and fabric together, you must not do so like you would normally iron clothes. Instead, place the iron on a section of the fabric, hold it firmly in place for a couple of seconds, then move on to another section by lifting the iron up. Once the bonding was done, I cut the pattern pieces for the origami details. I used special pen that disappears when heat is applied. To stop the fabric pieces from unraveling, I used fray check on the edges. Referencing the fold lines on the pattern, I folded the fabric accordingly. Since this is fabric, crisp lines had to be reinforced with heat from the iron. I had to pay extra attention to the corners where the folds met. I thought making the origami details would be one of the more challenging parts, but it ended up being kinda therapeutic. I think it's because cotton is used in shirting, which requires the fabric to create very crisp lines, and because I reinforced it using interfacing, the fabric became even more stable. These are the finished origami details. I've made 10 pieces each for 5 different sizes. I think I made plenty, but I always think I have more, then later find out I didn't make enough. On the same interface cotton fabric, I traced and cut pattern pieces for the bodice. I cut 2 pairs of each piece for the outer layer and the lining. I used my sewing machine to sew the bodice except for the bust area. The curves of the bust lines were too intricate for the sewing machine, so I ended up having to hand sew them. And this is the finished bodice. It's not perfect, but I'm very happy with it, and it's going to be covered with origami details anyway. To source fabric for the skirt part of the design, I visited Dongdaemun Fabric Market. I came here often for fabric research at work, but it feels very different to be here for my own project. I was always on a time crunch to source as many fabrics as I can in one session, so I didn't really have time to look around. After looking around for a bit, getting many inspirations along the way, I went to the fabric supplier that I used to work with and got 20 yards of soft netting tulle fabric. The skirt of the original design doesn't really have any texture, but I decided to take inspiration from one of my favorite designers, Giambattista Valli, and his extravagantly textured ball gown skirts. I folded the tulle fabric 4 times and marked the width the fabric strips need to be cut in. Bada is always around to check the progress. I cut the fabric into 5 cm wide and 2.5 cm wide strips. Using a gathering foot on the sewing machine, I started to gather the strips of fabric. This process by far took the most time, and I knew this will take very long time, so I needed to be very excited and motivated to see it through. Luckily, this was the final stretch, and thinking about the finished doll got me through this process. Still got very long way to go. First, I gathered 2.5 cm wide strips of fabric. Then, I sewed the gather strip onto the 5 cm fabric strips. Once the smaller gathered strips were sewn onto the larger fabric strips, I gathered the whole thing again. And this is the finished gathered piece. I just need at least 100 of these. At least. I cut the skirt base in tulle and marked the lines where the gathered pieces need to be sewn on.
Years later.
This is what the skirt looked like when all the gathered pieces were sewn onto the skirt. It took about 3 weeks, and midway through I ran out of the fabric, so I needed to get 10 more yards of the tulle. I used the same cotton fabric to cut the lining for the skirt. I was hoping that I could use the sewing machine to finish the skirt and to save a little bit of time, but because of the sheer volume and the weight of the skirt, the lining needed to be hand sewn. I was originally planning to make a dress, but adding intricate origami details onto such a voluminous skirt would make it very difficult to maintain and store later. So instead, I decided to make the bodice and the skirt into separate pieces. Seeing the doll in its final stages of customization made me forget all the challenges I had to overcome to get this far. I thought I would have to hand sew each origami details onto the bodice, but since it is its own piece without heavy skirt attached to it, I could use the sewing machine to attach the details. I took some time to get the placements right though. After making a couple of flowers to add to the design by sewing 4 of the origami petals together, the doll was finally done. Fashion brand July Column graciously gave me permission to shoot some videos in their showroom. Thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. I am planning to create more doll customization videos as well as other fashion related contents, so if you like this video and if something like this is to your liking, please consider subscribing, liking, leaving comments, and hitting that notification button. Thank you so much again and see you later!
오빠 작업해야 되는데 응? 왜 원단을 밟고 앉아있는 거야?